The rain fell like shattered glass over Seoul's glittering skyline, each drop catching the neon glow of a city that never apologized for its cruelty. Inside the Crystal Lotus Hotel's grand ballroom, champagne flutes clinked like delicate promises, and laughter echoed off marble floors slick with wealth and indifference. The annual charity gala was in full swing, a masquerade where Korea's elite wore their power as casually as their designer suits, where money whispered louder than morality, and where people like Amara Bennett were meant to remain invisible. She moved through the crowd like a shadow dressed in black and white, the hotel's standard-made uniform that somehow made her feel both protected and exposed. Her dark skin gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, a stark contrast to the sea of pale faces that barely registered her existence. She'd learned early in her 3 months working at the Crystal Lotus that invisibility was a survival skill. Keep your head down, refill the glasses, clear the plates, don't make eye contact, don't exist beyond your function. At 24, Amara had perfected the art of being no one. But tonight, the universe had other plans. She balanced a silver tray of champagne flutes with practiced grace, weaving between clusters of Korea's most powerful families. The Choice, the Parks, the Kangs, names that appeared in newspapers and owned newspapers. Her arms ached from hours of service, but she couldn't afford to show weakness. Not here. Not when she was sending everyone back home to Atlanta, where her grandmother's medical bills piled up like unpaid prayers. More champagne, a sharp voice demanded in Korean. Amara turned to find 3 women in their mid-20s, draped in labels she couldn't pronounce and cruelty she recognized in any language. The leader, a woman with surgically perfect features and lips painted the color of fresh blood, snapped her fingers like Amara was a dog. She approached with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Yes, ma'am." The woman plucked a glass from the tray without thanks, her diamond bracelet catching the light like a weapon. Her friends giggled, whispering in rapid Korean that Amara's still developing language skills couldn't fully catch. But she caught enough. Foreign, dark, probably illegal. Amara's jaw tightened, but she kept her face neutral. She'd heard worse, survived worse. "You speak Korean?" one of the other women asked, her tone making it sound like an accusation. "A little," Amara replied carefully in Korean, her accent obvious but her words clear. "How exotic," the blood-lipped woman purred, the word dripping with mockery. She turned to her friends, switching to rapid Korean that was meant to exclude. "I heard they hired foreign staff to look progressive. So American." They laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Amara started to retreat, but the woman's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. "Wait, I didn't dismiss you yet." The ballroom's noise seemed to fade. Amara's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to remain still, to remain small. "Do you know who I am?" the woman asked, leaning in close enough that Amara could smell her expensive perfume mixed with champagne. "I'm Park Hygiene. My father owns half the commercial real estate in Gangnam. One word from me, and you'll be deported before sunrise." "I apologize if I offended you," Amara said quietly, hating the tremor in her voice. "May I be excused?" Hygiene's eyes glittered with something darker than simple cruelty. Boredom dressed as entertainment. She glanced at her friends, then back at Amara. "You may." In a moment, what happened next occurred in slow motion. Hygiene reached for another champagne glass, her movements deliberately clumsy. The glass tipped, and suddenly red wine, deep as arterial blood, cascaded down the front of Amara's uniform. The cold liquid soaked through the fabric instantly, staining the white apron crimson. "Oh no!" Hygiene gasped with theatrical horror, her hand flying to her mouth. "I'm so clumsy. Look what I've done." Her friends erupted in laughter, not even bothering to hide their delight. Amara stood frozen, wine dripping from her uniform onto the pristine marble floor. The stain spread across her chest like a wound. Around them, a few guests glanced over with mild interest before returning to their conversations. No one intervened. No one cared. "You should clean that up," Hygiene said sweetly, gesturing to the wine pooling at Amara's feet. "Before someone slips. We wouldn't want anyone to get hurt." The message was clear: you're nothing. We can humiliate you, and no one will stop us. Amara's hands trembled as she set down the tray. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of these women who would feed on her pain like sharks on blood. I'll get something to clean this, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. But as she turned to leave, Hygiene's voice rang out loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Wait, everyone, look. The maid spilled wine all over herself. How unprofessional. More heads turned. More eyes landed on Amara like spotlights on a stage she never asked to be on. And that's when the temperature in the room dropped. The conversations didn't stop all at once. It was more like a wave of silence that rolled through the ballroom, starting from the grand entrance and spreading outward like frost. The crowd began to part, an involuntary movement driven by instinct rather than instruction. Amara felt it before she saw it, a presence that made the air itself feel heavier. He entered like winter given human form. The man who walked through those doors didn't need to announce himself. Power radiated from him in waves that made even Korea's elite suddenly remember humility. He was tall, unusual for a Korean man, with broad shoulders that filled out his black Tom Ford suit like it was designed specifically to weaponize his frame. His face was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. But it wasn't his looks that made people step back. It was the recognition of what he represented. Kang Min-jun. The name whispered through the crowd like a prayer to a dark god. Heir to the Kang crime family. Rumored to have taken over operations 2 years ago when his father mysteriously retired. Legitimate businesses that laundered illegitimate money. Art galleries that moved more than paintings. Nightclubs where people disappeared into VIP rooms and emerged, changed. He was 29, ruthless, and untouchable. And his eyes had just landed on Amara. She felt his gaze like a physical touch, stopping her mid-turn. Her breath caught in her throat as their eyes met across the ballroom. His dark and unreadable, hers wide with shock and the remnants of humiliation. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the entire ballroom held its breath. Then Min-jun's expression shifted, barely perceptible, but Amara saw it. The slight tightening around his eyes, the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands, which had been relaxed at his sides, slowly curled into fists. He had seen everything, and he was not pleased. Min-jun began walking, his steps measured and precise. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, people scrambling to get out of his path. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no, who had never needed to ask permission for anything. He was heading straight toward them. Hygiene's smile faltered. Her friends went pale. Oh God. One of them whispered in Korean. That's Kang Min-jun. Why is he? Another started. But Hygiene cut them off. Her voice sharp with false confidence. It's fine. My father does business with the Kang family. He knows who I am. But as Min-jun drew closer, even she seemed to realize that family connections might not save her this time. He stopped directly in front of Amara, so close she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and dark, like cedar and smoke. Up close, he was even more intimidating. His presence filled the space between them until there was room for nothing else. Not fear, not shame, not even breath. Are you hurt? He asked in Korean. His voice deep and quiet, meant only for her. Amara blinked, shocked that he was speaking to her at all. No, I'm fine. You're lying. It wasn't a question. His eyes traveled down to the wine-stained uniform, then to the puddle at her feet, then finally, slowly, deliberately, to Hygiene and her friends. The women flinched. Which one of you did this? Min-jun asked, his voice still quiet but now carrying an edge that could cut through steel. Silence. I won't ask again. Hygiene stepped forward. Her chin lifted in defiance even as her hands trembled. It was an accident. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to humiliate her in front of a room full of people? Min-jun interrupted, his tone conversational. You didn't mean to assault an employee who was doing her job? You didn't mean to stain her uniform and then mock her for it? Assault. Hygiene laughed, the sound brittle. It was just wine. And she's just a... Finish that sentence, Min-jun said softly. And I promise you'll regret it. Hygiene's mouth snapped shut. Min-jun turned back to Amara, and when he looked at her, something in his expression shifted. It wasn't soft, Min-jun didn't do soft, but it was different. Less ice, more fire. What's your name? He asked. Amara, she whispered. Amara Bennett. Amara, he repeated, as if testing how her name felt in his mouth. Then, louder, so the entire ballroom could hear. From this moment forward, Amara Bennett is under the protection of the Kang family. Anyone who disrespects her, disrespects me. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Amara's heart stopped. Sir, I don't understand. But Min-jun wasn't finished. He turned to Hygiene, his expression carved from ice. You and your friends will leave. Now, and if I hear that any of you have spoken about this woman, looked at this woman, or even thought about this woman in a negative way, your father's commercial real estate empire will discover that half his properties are in violation of safety codes he didn't know existed. You can't, Hygiene started. I can, Min-jun interrupted. And I will. Test me. The three women fled, their designer heels clicking frantically against marble as they scrambled toward the exit. The ballroom remained silent, hundreds of eyes watching, waiting. Min-jun turned back to Amara, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he allowed something almost resembling a smile to touch his lips. You're done working tonight. Come with me. It wasn't a request. And as Amara stood there, wine-stained and trembling, staring into the dark eyes of Seoul's most dangerous man, she realized that her life had just changed forever. She just didn't know if it was for better or worse. Speech balloon. Have you ever felt invisible until one person truly saw you? Even if that person terrified you? Tell me below, and click and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Red Heart Fire. Amara followed Kang Min-jun through the ballroom in a daze, acutely aware of every eye tracking their movement. The whispers started the moment they passed. Hushed, frantic speculation in Korean that she only partially understood. But she caught the important words: Kang, protection, foreign, dangerous. Min-jun didn't acknowledge the stares. He moved through the crowd like Moses through the Red Sea, and people scattered before him with a mixture of reverence and fear. His hand hovered near the small of her back, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his palm through her wine-soaked uniform. It was possessive without contact, protective without permission. They exited through a private corridor she'd never been allowed to access, past security guards who nodded respectfully at Min-jun and looked straight through her. The hotel's opulence faded as they moved deeper into the building, replaced by the utilitarian hallways reserved for staff. But even here, Min-jun seemed to know exactly where he was going. Sir, Amara finally found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. I don't understand what just happened. You will, he replied without turning around. They stopped at a service elevator. Min-jun pressed the call button with one elegant finger, then finally turned to face her fully. Up close, away from the crowd, he was somehow even more overwhelming. She'd never been this near to someone who radiated such controlled violence. It was in the way he held himself, perfectly still, perfectly calm, like a predator that didn't need to prove its lethality because everyone already knew. You're American, he observed, switching to English with barely a trace of accent. His English was flawless, educated, probably at some Ivy League school she could never afford. Yes, Amara confirmed, grateful to speak her native language. From Atlanta. How long have you been in Seoul? 3 months. And you're working as a maid. It wasn't a question, but the way he said it made it sound like he was solving a puzzle. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Min-jun gestured for her to enter first. A gesture that felt oddly courteous from a man who just threatened to destroy someone's family business over spilled wine. Inside the elevator, the silence stretched between them like a living thing. Amara kept her eyes on the floor numbers ascending, trying not to think about how small the space felt with him in it. He smelled like expensive cologne and something else. Something darker that she couldn't name. Danger, maybe, or power. Why did you help me? She asked suddenly, the question escaping before she could stop it. Min-jun's reflection in the polished elevator doors showed the slightest hint of a smile. I don't like bullies. You're a... She stopped herself, but his eyes found hers in the reflection. A what? He prompted, genuinely curious. Say it. A mafia boss, she finished quietly. Among other things. He turned to face her directly, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. But I have rules, Amara Bennett. I don't hurt people who don't deserve it. And I especially don't tolerate entitled children playing power games with people who can't fight back. The elevator stopped on the penthouse floor. Of course it was the penthouse. The doors opened to reveal a private foyer with black marble floors and modern art that probably cost more than her grandmother's house. This is where you live? Amara asked, hesitating at the threshold. One of the places. Min-jun stepped out and waited, his hand extended in invitation. You're safe here, I promise. Something about the way he said promise made her believe him, which was possibly the most dangerous thing of all. She stepped out of the elevator, and the doors whispered shut behind her, sealing her into this new reality. Min-jun's penthouse was a study in contrasts, cold modern architecture softened by unexpected touches of warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Seoul's glittering skyline, rain still streaking the glass like tears. The furniture was minimalist and expensive, all clean lines and neutral tones. But there were books everywhere, stacked on tables, filling built-in shelves, some open as if recently read. And in one corner, an acoustic guitar rested on a stand, its presence incongruous with everything else she knew about this man. The bathroom is through there, Min-jun said, gesturing to a hallway. You can shower and change. I'll have someone bring appropriate clothes. Amara looked down at her wine-stained uniform, suddenly remembering how she must look. I should just go home. I need to. You need to understand something first. Min-jun's voice cut through her protests like a blade. Park Hye-jin's family is powerful, but they're also vindictive. If you go back to the staff quarters tonight, there will be consequences. Her friends will spread rumors. Your supervisor will find reasons to write you up. Within a week, you'll be fired, possibly blacklisted from every decent hotel in Seoul. Amara's stomach dropped. But I need this job. I can't afford to. I know. His expression softened fractionally. Which is why you're not going back there. Not tonight, at least. I don't understand. Why do you care what happens to me? For a long moment, Min-jun didn't answer. He walked to the window, his hands sliding into his pockets, his silhouette stark against the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. When I was 12, my mother was a housekeeper for a wealthy family in Gangnam. Not because we needed the money, my father was already successful, but because she wanted her own independence, her own purpose. He paused, his jaw tightening. One day, the lady of the house accused her of stealing a necklace. She hadn't, but no one believed her because she was the help. They fired her, publicly humiliated her, destroyed her reputation. Amara's heart clenched. 3 days later, my mother took her own life. Min-jun's reflection in the glass showed no emotion, but his hands had curled into fists. The necklace was found a month later in the daughter's room. It had fallen behind a dresser. They never apologized. They never even acknowledged what they'd done. I'm so sorry, Amara whispered. I was too young to protect her then. Min-jun turned to face her, and now she saw it. The carefully contained rage that lived beneath his composed exterior. But I'm not too young anymore. And when I see someone being humiliated for sport by people who've never suffered a consequence in their lives. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Understanding dawned. So this isn't really about me. It's about the version of my mother I couldn't save, he admitted. But that doesn't make my protection any less real. You've been marked now, Amara. The moment I declared you under Kang family protection, you became part of a world you don't understand. Then help me understand, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Go shower first. Then we'll talk. The bathroom was larger than Amara's entire rented room in the staff quarters. Marble and chrome, with a rainfall shower that felt like luxury incarnate after 3 months of cold, weak water pressure. She stood under the hot water for longer than necessary, watching the red wine spiral down the drain like diluted blood, trying to process everything that had happened. Her life had been simple until tonight. Wake up, work, send money home, sleep, repeat. She'd come to Seoul on a working visa program that promised cultural exchange and fair wages. The reality had been harder, longer hours, lower pay than advertised, casual racism disguised as curiosity. But she'd endured because her grandmother needed her, because going back to Atlanta empty-handed wasn't an option. Now she was in a Mafia boss's penthouse, under his protection, pulled into a world of power and violence she'd only seen in movies. When she emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a plush robe, she found clothes laid out on the bed in the adjacent guest room. Expensive loungewear that somehow fit perfectly, as if Min-jun had guessed her size at a glance. The thought should have been creepy, but instead it felt oddly considerate. She dressed quickly and ventured back into the main living area, where she found Min-jun at the kitchen island, pouring tea. He'd removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle and, she noticed with a start, a tattoo. A black dragon that wrapped around his right forearm, its head disappearing under the fabric of his shirt. Green tea, he said, sliding a cup toward her. Good for shock. Is that what I'm in? Amara asked, accepting the cup. Shock, aren't you? She considered this, then nodded. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up back in my room and realize this was all a stress dream. It's not. Min-jun leaned against the counter, studying her with those impossibly dark eyes. And tomorrow reality will set in. The hotel will call you. Your supervisor will demand explanations. Park Hye-jin's family will try to spin the narrative in their favor. What do I tell them? Nothing. I'll handle it. I don't want you to fight my battles, Amara protested. This particular battle isn't one you can win alone, Min-jun said bluntly. You're a foreign worker in a country where connections matter more than truth. They will crush you, Amara. Let me prevent that. She wanted to argue, but the practical part of her, the part that had kept her alive through foster homes and poverty and crossing oceans alone, recognized the truth in his words. What do you want in return? She asked quietly. Min-jun's eyebrows rose. You think I want something? Everyone wants something. That's how the world works. You're right, he conceded. I do want something. I want you to trust me, at least temporarily. I want you to let me fix the situation I've created by involving you in my world. And, he paused, as if debating whether to continue. I want you to have dinner with me tomorrow night. That caught her off guard. Dinner. I find you interesting, Amara Bennett from Atlanta. You didn't cry when they humiliated you. You didn't beg. You stood there with dignity even when they tried to take it from you. He smiled, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. I'd like to know more about the woman who has that kind of strength. Amara's heart did something complicated in her chest. That's not strength. That's just survival. There's no difference, Min-jun said softly. Not where we come from. Where we come from. The phrase hung between them, acknowledging without stating that they both knew what it meant to fight for every inch of ground, to be underestimated and overlooked, to carry scars that didn't show. Okay, Amara heard herself say. Dinner. But just dinner. Just dinner, Min-jun agreed. Though something in his expression suggested, he knew it would be more than that. It already was. Amara slept in the guest room that night, in sheets that felt like clouds, in a silence broken only by rain against glass. But she barely slept at all, her mind racing with questions and implications. What had she agreed to? Who was Kang Min-jun beyond the terrifying exterior? And why did some part of her, some reckless, dangerous part, want to find out? In the morning, she'd have to face consequences. But tonight, wrapped in luxury she didn't deserve and protection she didn't understand, Amara Bennett let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. even if safety was an illusion, especially if it was. Morning came too quickly, painting Seoul in shades of gray and gold. Amara woke to the smell of coffee and the quiet murmur of voices speaking rapid Korean. For a disorienting moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back like a wave. The gala, the wine, Min-jun. She dressed quickly in the clothes from last night. Her wine-stained uniform folded neatly on a chair like evidence of a crime. When she emerged from the guest room, she found Min-jun seated at his dining table, immaculate in a charcoal suit, reviewing documents while speaking into a phone pressed to his ear. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she was really there, as if he'd half expected her to vanish in the night like a dream. He ended his call with a clipped sentence and gestured to the seat across from him. Coffee? Breakfast? I should really get back. Amara started. But Min-jun was already pouring coffee into an expensive-looking cup. Sit, he said. And it wasn't quite a command, but close enough. We need to discuss what happens next. Amara sat, accepting the coffee. It was perfect, rich and strong. Nothing like the instant coffee she'd been living on. What happens next is I go back to work and pretend last night didn't happen. Last night happened, Min-jun said flatly. And pretending otherwise won't protect you from the fallout. As if summoned by his words, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and something dark crossed his face. It's already starting. What is? Instead of answering, he turned the phone so she could see. It was a news article already viral on Korean social media. The headline made her blood run cold. Kang Air defends foreign maid at charity gala. Romance or power play? Below it was a photo, grainy but unmistakable, of Min-jun and Amara in the ballroom, his hand hovering near her back, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that looked intimate even in still image. Oh God, Amara whispered. There's more. Min-jun scrolled, revealing a cascade of articles, tweets, and forum posts. Some speculated about a secret relationship. Others questioned Min-jun's judgment. Many, too many. Focused on Amara's race with thinly veiled racism disguised as cultural concern. One comment in particular made her stomach turn. A Kang with a black maid? He's disgracing his family. She probably seduced him for money. They don't even know me, Amara said, her voice shaking. They don't know anything about me. They don't need to, Min-jun replied, his tone bitter. In their world, you're already guilty of the crime of existing in a space they think belongs only to them. He set the phone down and looked at her directly. This is what I meant about consequences. By protecting you, I've made you visible. And visibility is dangerous. Then what do I do? You let me handle it, Min-jun said. But first, you need to understand what you're dealing with. Park Hye-jin's family isn't just wealthy. They're connected to some very dangerous people. Legitimate businessmen on the surface, but underneath. He paused. Let's just say they've made enemies, including my family. Your family, Amara repeated. The Kang crime family. We prefer enterprise, Min-jun said with dark humor. But yes, my father built an empire on both sides of the law. When he retired, I inherited it, the legitimate holdings and the less legitimate ones. Like what? Min-jun studied her for a moment, as if deciding how much truth she could handle. Protection services. Import-export businesses that don't ask too many questions. Entertainment venues. Real estate acquisitions that sometimes involve convincing reluctant sellers. He leaned back. I'm not a good man, Amara. I've done things that would horrify you. But I have a code, and that code includes protecting people who can't protect themselves. Like your mother. Like my mother, he agreed softly. Before Amara could respond, the penthouse elevator chimed. Min-jun's entire demeanor shifted instantly, from vulnerable to vigilant in a heartbeat. His hand moved to something beneath his jacket, and Amara realized with a chill that he was armed. But then he relaxed fractionally as a tall man in his 30s emerged from the elevator. He was handsome in a rough way, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. He bowed slightly to Min-jun, then looked at Amara with undisguised curiosity. "This is Lee Taeyong," Min-jun introduced in English. "My head of security and oldest friend. Taeyong, this is Amara Bennett, the maid who broke the internet," Taeyong said in perfect English, his lips quirking. "Nice to meet you." "I didn't break anything," Amara protested. "I just existed in the wrong place." "In our world, that's often enough," Taeyong replied. He turned to Min-jun, switching to Korean. Amara caught only fragments, but the words she did understand made her nervous. Problem, Park family, retaliation. Min-jun's jaw tightened. He responded in rapid Korean, his tone clipped and authoritative. Taeyong nodded, glanced once more at Amara with something like sympathy, then disappeared back into the elevator. "What was that about?" Amara asked. "Park Hye-jin's father is angry about last night. He's threatening to file a formal complaint with the hotel, claiming I harassed his daughter and used my influence to intimidate her." Min-jun's smile was cold. "He's also put pressure on the hotel to terminate your employment immediately." Amara's world tilted. "They're firing me?" "They're trying to." Min-jun stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. "Which is why we're going to the Crystal Lotus right now. Together." "What? No. I can't." "You can and you will." Min-jun's voice softened fractionally. "Trust me, Amara. I told you I'd handle this. Let me." Everything in Amara screamed to refuse, to run, to not get deeper into this dangerous world. But the practical part of her, the survivor, knew she had no other options. Without this job, she couldn't pay her grandmother's medical bills. Without Min-jun's protection, she'd be blacklisted and deported. She was trapped. Or maybe, some small voice whispered, she was being saved. "Okay," she said finally, "but I'm not hiding behind you. If we're doing this, I face them too." Min-jun's expression shifted into something that might have been respect. "As you wish." The Crystal Lotus Hotel felt different in daylight. Less magical, more mercenary. Amara walked through the employee entrance beside Min-jun, acutely aware of the stares following them. Word had spread fast. Staff members whispered behind their hands, some with sympathy, most with schadenfreude. Manager Kim waited in his office, a thin man with graying hair and a permanent expression of stress. He stood when Min-jun entered, his bow so deep it was almost obsequious. "Mr. Kang, this is unexpected." "Is it?" Min-jun settled into a chair without being invited, the picture of casual dominance. "You attempted to terminate Ms. Bennett's employment this morning without cause or due process. I'm here to discuss why that won't be happening." Manager Kim's eyes darted to Amara, then quickly away. "The situation is complicated. Ms. Bennett was involved in an incident that reflects poorly on the hotel. We have reputation to consider." "The incident?" Min-jun interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Involved your employee being assaulted by a guest. Yet you're punishing the victim instead of the perpetrator. Interesting business model. Mr. Park is a valued client, and I'm a valued shareholder." Min-jun let that sink in. "Did you think I wouldn't check? The Kang family owns 15% of the Crystal Lotus Hotel Group, which makes me very interested in how this establishment treats its employees." Manager Kim went pale. I wasn't aware." "Of course you weren't. You were too busy trying to appease a bully to do your due diligence." Min-jun leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. Ms. Bennett will be reassigned to a position that doesn't involve guest-facing duties. Her salary will be increased by 30% as compensation for the trauma she endured on your property. And you will personally apologize to her for attempting to terminate her employment without investigation." The silence in the office was deafening. "And if I refuse?" Manager Kim asked weakly. "Then I'll call an emergency shareholder meeting and propose a full audit of hotel operations, including your management decisions over the past 5 years. I wonder what we'll find." Min-jun's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Choose wisely." Manager Kim looked at Amara, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. Pride versus survival. Survival won. "Ms. Bennett," he said stiffly, I apologize for the hasty decision this morning. We would be pleased to retain your employment in a revised capacity. It wasn't sincere, but Amara didn't care. She had her job. She had security. She had a future, because of the dangerous man sitting beside her. Thank you, she managed. They left the hotel together, stepping into Seoul's midday chaos. Amara felt lighter somehow, despite everything. But as they reached Min-jun's car, a sleek black Mercedes that screamed wealth, reality crashed back. This isn't over, is it? She asked. No, Min-jun admitted. Park Hye-jin's family won't accept this quietly. And now that you're connected to me, you're a target. A target for what? Leverage. Revenge. A way to hurt me through you. He opened the car door for her, and she noticed how his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, looking for threats, calculating exits. Which is why I'm assigning you security. Absolutely not. It's not negotiable. Min-jun's tone left no room for argument. And tonight we're having that dinner I mentioned. Somewhere public, somewhere safe. Somewhere you can start to understand the world you've entered. Amara wanted to protest, but looking into his eyes, she saw something that stopped her. Not just determination, but genuine concern. This man, this dangerous, complicated man, actually cared what happened to her. The question was, why? One dinner, she said finally. One dinner, Min-jun agreed. But both of them knew it was a lie. This was already so much more than dinner. And neither of them could walk away now. The restaurant Min-jun chose was called Moonlight, a rooftop establishment in Gangnam where the wealthy came to see and be seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of Seoul's skyline, now painted in shades of purple and gold as sunset approached. The tables were spaced far enough apart for privacy, close enough for gossip. Amara felt profoundly out of place in the dress Min-jun had sent to her newly upgraded hotel room that afternoon. A simple but elegant navy silk that probably cost more than 3 months of her old salary. The note that came with it had been characteristically brief. Where this car arrives at 7. Now she sat across from him at a table near the windows, trying not to think about how many people were stealing glances at them. The viral photo from last night had made them Seoul's most talked about couple. Even though they weren't a couple at all. Were they? You look beautiful, Min-jun said. And the compliment sounded genuine, not rehearsed. I look expensive, Amara corrected. There's a difference. You'd look beautiful in anything. He paused. Or nothing. Heat flooded Amara's face. Did you just? I apologize, Min-jun said, though his eyes held amusement. That was inappropriate. I spend too much time with criminals. My manners have deteriorated. Despite herself, Amara laughed. I didn't know Mafia bosses worried about manners. We don't. But I'm not just a Mafia boss. He leaned back, studying her. I studied economics at Yale. I speak 4 languages. I collect rare books and play guitar badly. I'm capable of being civilized when the situation requires it. And when it doesn't require it, then I'm capable of other things. The temperature in his voice dropped. Things you shouldn't ask about. A waiter appeared with wine. Something red and undoubtedly expensive. Min-jun dismissed him with a slight gesture after he poured, leaving them alone again. To new beginnings, Min-jun said, raising his glass. To survival, Amara countered, raising hers. Their glasses met with a delicate chime, and for a moment, they simply looked at each other. Amara felt something shift in the air between them. Something dangerous and inevitable, like watching a storm roll in across the ocean. Tell me about Atlanta, Min-jun said suddenly. Tell me who you were before Seoul. Why? Because I want to know. The real you, not the version you show the world. It was such a direct request that Amara didn't know how to refuse it. So she told him. About growing up in foster care after her mother died when she was 8. About her grandmother who finally took her in when she was 13, giving her the first real home she'd ever known. About working 3 jobs to help with bills. About community college classes she couldn't afford to finish. About dreams deferred and postponed and eventually abandoned. My grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer last year, Amara said quietly, staring into her wine. The treatment is expensive. Medicare doesn't cover everything. I came to Seoul because the program promised good wages and the chance to send money home. It was supposed to be temporary, just long enough to help her beat this. And if she doesn't beat it? Min-jun asked gently. Then at least I'll know I tried. That I didn't give up on her the way everyone else gave up on me. Amara's voice cracked slightly. She's the only family I have. The only person who ever chose to keep me. Min-jun reached across the table, and his hand covered hers. The touch was electric, warm and grounding and somehow intimate despite the public setting. I understand, he said. More than you know. Because of your mother. Because of my mother, he confirmed. And because I know what it's like to be someone's whole world. The pressure of it. The fear of failing them. Who depends on you? Amara asked. Min-jun's expression grew distant. My younger sister. She's 19, studying art in Paris. She doesn't know the full extent of what I do, what our family really is. I've kept that world away from her, given her the chance to be normal. Everything I do, every decision I make, I think about how it affects her future. That's why you took over from your father. To protect her. Among other reasons. Min-jun withdrew his hand, and Amara immediately missed its warmth. My father was brutal. Effective but brutal. He believed in ruling through fear. I believe in ruling through respect, and strategic fear when necessary. Is there a difference? Yes. Fear makes people obey. Respect makes them loyal. And in my world, loyalty is the only currency that matters. Their food arrived, beautiful plates of fusion cuisine that looked more like art than sustenance. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the tension between them shifting from dangerous to something softer, more intimate. Can I ask you something? Amara said eventually. Anything. Why did you really help me? And don't say it's just about your mother. There's something else. Min-jun set down his chopsticks, his expression thoughtful. You reminded me that I'm still capable of feeling righteous anger. That beneath all the cold calculation and strategic thinking, there's still someone who gives a damn about injustice. He paused. I've done terrible things, Amara. Things that keep me awake at night. But when I saw you standing there, humiliated but unbroken, I felt clean anger for the first time in years. Pure. Uncomplicated. It reminded me of who I used to be before this life consumed me. And who was that? Someone who wanted to change the world, not just survive it. The vulnerability in his admission made Amara's heart ache. This man, this dangerous, powerful man, was just as trapped as she was. Trapped by duty, by legacy, by choices made before he was old enough to understand their weight. Maybe you still can, she said softly. Change the world, I mean, or at least your corner of it. Maybe, Min-jun agreed, with the right motivation. The way he looked at her when he said it made something flutter in Amara's chest. Something reckless and terrifying and intoxicating all at once. They were halfway through dessert when Min-jun's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his entire demeanor changed instantly, from relaxed to razor-focused in a heartbeat. What's wrong? Amara asked. We need to leave. Now. Min-jun was already standing, his hand extended to her. Don't ask questions. Just trust me. The urgency in his voice sent adrenaline spiking through Amara's system. She took his hand, and he pulled her up, already moving toward the exit. But they'd barely made it 3 steps when a voice called out in Korean. Kang Min-jun. How unexpected. They turned to find a man in his 50s approaching, well-dressed, with gray hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Behind him were 2 younger men, clearly bodyguards, their hands resting near concealed weapons. Chairman Park, Min-jun said coolly. I didn't know you dined here. I don't usually, but when I heard you were here with your companion, I thought it was an excellent opportunity for conversation. Chairman Park's gaze slid to Amara, and she felt naked under his assessment. This must be the young woman who caused such trouble for my daughter. Your daughter caused trouble for herself, Min-jun corrected, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. And for Ms. Bennett. A matter of perspective. Chairman Park's smile widened. My daughter tells a very different story. One where this foreign woman deliberately provoked her, then used your infatuation to avoid consequences. Your daughter is a liar. Careful, Min-jun. You may be powerful, but you're not untouchable. Chairman Park took a step closer, and Min-jun's hand moved fractionally toward his jacket, toward the gun Amara now knew he carried. You embarrassed my family, made us look weak. In our world, that requires correction. Is that a threat? Min-jun's voice was deadly calm. Consider it a warning. Between businessmen. Chairman Park's eyes returned to Amara. Tell me, young lady, what did you do to enchant the Kang heir? What special talents do you possess? The implication was clear, and it was vile. Amara felt rage bubble up, hot and cleansing. Before Min-jun could respond, she stepped forward, meeting Chairman Park's gaze directly. I possess the talent of standing with dignity when people like your daughter try to strip it from me, she said in careful but clear Korean. I possess the talent of surviving in a country that doesn't want me, working jobs that break my back, sending money to family who needs it. What talents do you possess, Chairman Park? Besides raising a daughter who finds entertainment in cruelty. Silence descended like a guillotine blade. Chairman Park's smile vanished. You dare. She dares. Min-jun interrupted, pride evident in his voice. And she's right. Your daughter is a spoiled bully, and you're an enabler. This conversation is over. It's far from over, Chairman Park said coldly. You've made an enemy today, Min-jun. And enemies in our world don't live long, comfortable lives. Neither do people who threaten what's mine. Min-jun's hand found Amara's, his grip protective and possessive. Come near her again. Come near anyone I protect, and I'll burn your empire to the ground. That's not a threat, Chairman Park. It's a promise. They left then, Min-jun guiding her through the restaurant with barely controlled urgency. Amara could feel eyes on them. The entire restaurant had witnessed the confrontation. By tomorrow, it would be all over social media. In the elevator down, Min-jun's composure finally cracked. He punched the wall once, the sound echoing in the small space. I'm sorry, he said, breathing hard. I didn't know he'd be there. I should have anticipated. It's not your fault. It is. Everything that happens to you from this point forward is my fault. He turned to her, and his eyes were anguished. I pulled you into this world without permission. I made you a target because I couldn't control my own anger at seeing injustice. No, Amara said firmly. You gave me a choice. You gave me protection. You saw me when everyone else looked through me. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. I'm choosing to trust you, Min-jun. Don't make me regret it. For a moment, they stood frozen, inches apart, the air between them crackling with unspoken want. Then Min-jun's control shattered. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce and full of everything they'd been holding back. His hand cupped the back of her neck, his other arm wrapping around her waist, pulling her against him like he could protect her through sheer proximity. Amara kissed him back with equal intensity, her fingers tangling in his hair, tasting wine and danger and something that felt terrifyingly like destiny. The elevator dinged, announcing their arrival, and they broke apart, both breathing hard. This complicates things, Min-jun said, his forehead resting against hers. Everything about this is already complicated, Amara replied. True. He pulled back slightly, his thumb brushing her swollen lips. But I need you to understand something. Chairman Park wasn't bluffing. He will come after you to hurt me. After tonight, you're in more danger than ever. Then protect me, Amara said simply. Isn't that what you promised? With my life, Min-jun vowed, and the intensity in his voice made it clear he meant it literally. They exited into the parking garage, where Taeyong waited beside the Mercedes, his expression grim. We have a problem, he said in Korean to Min-jun. What kind of problem? The kind with guns and Park family connections. Taeyong opened the car door. We need to get her somewhere safe. Now. As Amara slid into the car, her mind reeling from everything that had happened, she realized with absolute clarity that her life had crossed a threshold. There was before Min-jun, a life of invisible struggle and quiet endurance. If you discovered a truth that could destroy everything you thought you knew about someone, would you stay or walk away? Drop your answer below, and click and subscribe so you never miss what happens next in part 2.